Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be looking at the early slate, the MLB early slate on DraftKings for Wednesday, July 24th. In this video, I'm going to cover the 7-game early, 7 games from 1 o'clock to 3:30 or 3:40 for Wednesday today, and then we do have like an 8-game night slate, so pretty good slate for both early and main, pretty even amount of games for both. We'll cover the early first, then after this video goes up, shortly after this video goes up, I will have a video for the night slate covering that for DraftKings and for Yahoo. Yahoo doesn't do early slates, so just DraftKings for the early. We'll start off with pitching, work our way through the pitcher-player pool. I'll be sure to touch on all the pitchers that I like for today. Then we'll look at some stacks that I like. We'll talk about some BVP plays as well towards the end of the video. But before we do get started, guys, I would appreciate it if you would drop a like on the video. And if you are new to the channel, make sure you click that subscribe button down below so that way you won't miss out on any of my new videos. So at the top of the pitcher-player pool, Justin Verlander, our most expensive option today. He is $12,100 in a matchup at home against Oakland. Verlander definitely worth this price tag. He's been so dominant this year, consistently pitching deep into games. I know the last few starts he's kind of struggled against Seattle and against the Angels. He struggled. He did give up 2 runs in his last 2 starts against Texas, but was able to get plenty of Ks, 7 Ks in the start on the 14th, and then in his last start at home against Texas, he got 12 Ks. Always a guy that is going to go out there and get strikeouts. He's just a consistent pitcher. He's done well this year against Oakland. He has faced them once this year and went 8 innings, only allowed 4 hits, 1 run, got 8 strikeouts, 32 DraftKings points. We could see a similar performance from Verlander today. I think there is some good value pitching we can target today. There are bats we want to pay up for, but there are some teams that have value as well, like the Phillies have a pretty high total, and they have some cheap hitters. Like none of their hitters are over 4,500. I imagine the Phillies are going to be insanely popular today, but for good reason. So you can definitely pay up for Verlander and still fit in a high upside team like the Phillies against Zimmerman. But if you want to go cheaper at pitching, then that could allow you to maybe get a team like the Brewers versus Lucas Sims, or some Astros bats versus Chris Bassett. But I expect a lot of my builds today are going to be paying up at pitcher for Verlander, going to a couple cheap guys who we'll talk about, and then really loading up on the Phillies bats because I really do like the Phillies today. Very good matchup for them against Jordan Zimmerman. So I'm going to be putting Verlander in as my SP1. You do have Mike Minor as another pitcher you could potentially consider today, 10,400 against Seattle. I do like this matchup a lot for Minor. He's been very good this year against the Mariners. Through 2 games against them, he has averaged 36 DraftKings points. And Minor has been a pretty good pitcher this year, consistently pitching deep into games, throwing 100 plus pitches pretty much every start. It's a favorable matchup. The Seattle team will strike out versus left-handed pitching. It's not that good of a lineup either. Once you get past like the top 3 or 4 hitters, there's a lot of easy outs in this lineup, especially when you get towards the bottom. Mariners have a low total today. If you need the savings, I wouldn't mind at all playing Mike Minor over Verlander, but I feel like I'll be able to find enough value hitters to where I can get up from Minor to Verlander. And I do feel a little bit safer with Verlander. I feel like his risk, or him as a risky pitcher, is a lot less than Mike Minor. Minor might be a little bit more risky than Verlander. But now some of the other guys you have really don't have a lot of interest in any of the other pitchers below Minor. Like 9,500 for John Lester just feels like too much to pay. It's a very good matchup against the Giants, very good ballpark, but just don't think I can pay that price tag for him. Kind of the same thing can be said for John Gray against the Nationals. Pretty tough matchup. 9K for Gray just feels like a little bit too much to pay. Like I said, I think a lot of my builds today are going to be Verlander and Minor as my SP1s, and then I'm going to be throwing in a bunch of different cheap guys who we're about to talk about. So starting off with the first cheap guy that I think is playable, Vince Velasquez, 6,200 against the Tigers. Vince Velasquez hasn't been that good this year, but this is a very favorable matchup for him, facing a Tigers team that will strike out versus right-handed pitching. The Tigers' 4.8 implied run total is a bit surprising. I was surprised to see it that high, but I still think Velasquez is a good play here at this price tag, 6,200. Just given the matchup and the upside that he has in this matchup, he's definitely a guy that I will be throwing in some lineups, and I will have him in my player pool. So I like Velasquez as a cheap option. I don't think Eric Fede is the worst play either. Getting the Rockies outside of Coors Field, 5,700. Eric Fede is definitely a guy you could look to as a cheap SP2. There was some questions whether it's going to be Corbin or Fede pitching Game 1. It looks like it's going to be Fede. If it winds up being Corbin, then obviously that changes things. But from what I'm seeing, Fede is going to pitch the early game, and then because it is a doubleheader today, Fede is going to pitch the early game. Corbin's going to pitch the night game. If that's the case, Fede at 5,700, not the worst value. But the guy that I like, it's pretty risky, scary to say, but Taylor Clark, 5,200 against the Orioles. I think he's probably one of the better value pitchers on this slate. Him and Velasquez, two of the guys I really like. Clark been terrible this year. He's not a good pitcher. Doesn't really have a lot of strikeout stuff. Doesn't have a ton of upside. But in this matchup with the Orioles, getting them at home outside of Camden Yards, Orioles going to have to travel to the National League, so they're going to lose their DH. They're going to have to put a pitcher in the lineup, which is pretty much a free strikeout. It's just a really bad lineup. Not a lot of good hitters in this lineup. Like once you get past the top 3 or 4 guys, just a lot of easy outs down there at the bottom. Plenty of Ks. Even though Clark doesn't get Ks much, he can definitely strike out some of these guys. And a pretty low total for the Orioles as well. With how bad Taylor Clark has been this year, I was surprised to see that the Orioles only have a 4.3 implied run total. 5,200, you don't really need Clark to go out there and have a great game. If he gets 15 to 16 DraftKings points, which I think he can definitely do in this matchup, then he's probably going to wind up being a good value pitcher at his cheap price tag. So I'm going to be rolling out some Taylor Clark. Feels risky, but given the way this slate breaks down, I don't feel like any of these mid-tier options are really viable. I feel like you're either going to be paying up for Verlander or Clark, or paying up for Verlander or Minor, and then you're just going to be punting with either Velasquez or Clark or Fede or Chassin, one of those cheap guys, and then just kind of rolling the bats, whatever bats you like. Because if you do go with Verlander and Clark, that still leaves you over 4K remaining per player, which you can definitely work around on today's slate. So let's go ahead and talk about some bats now. Obviously, the Phillies are a team that's going to really stand out today. 5.8 implied run total against Jordan Zimmermann. The Phillies are incredibly cheap on DraftKings. 4,500 is the most expensive price for a hitter. Kingery, Harper, and Hoskins are all 4,500. Then you have Segura at 4K, and then everyone else is under 4K. So there's a lot of good value in this Phillies lineup. There's just so much upside for this Phillies team against Zimmermann. So the two guys that I really like are Harper and Hoskins. Obviously, I'm going to have exposure to pretty much every hitter in this lineup given their prices. But Harper and Hoskins are the two guys that I like the most. Obviously, probably the two best power bats in this Phillies lineup. And we know Jordan Zimmermann will give up home runs to both sides of the plate. 21 home runs on the year for Rhys Hoskins, a ton of power, and now he's facing a pitcher that will give up a lot of home runs. Doesn't really get strikeouts. Jordan Zimmermann, just a terrible pitcher. We'll just pull up his game log real quickly. Look at his last 3 starts. He's got negative DraftKings points in his last 3 starts. Last start against the Blue Jays only went 3 innings, allowed 6 runs. Against the Royals only went 4 innings, allowed 7 runs. Against Boston, 3 innings, allowed 7 runs. Jordan Zimmermann's just been terrible this year. The Phillies are such a good, easy stack to go to today. So I really like them, given their pricing. And Hoskins and Harper, 2 of my favorite plays from that Phillies lineup. But obviously you can play guys like JT Realmuto at only 3,900. Cesar Hernandez batting 6th for only 3,500. Feels like a really good value. If Nick Williams is in the lineup, he's only 2,700. Feels like one of the best values on the slate. Just so easy to get the Phillies bats with pitching that you want. So I do like going to them today, even if they are going to be a little bit chalky. I still think most of these guys are worth the ownership given their pricing. And then another team that I think has some upside might go a little bit overlooked given their run total, but I think the Rangers versus Mike Leake definitely give you some upside. Joey Gallo is obviously the guy that really stands out. Just a ton of power, facing a pitcher in Mike Leake who will give up home runs. Love Gallo today, whether you're stacking the Rangers or if you want to use him as a one-off at 4,700, under 5K. Rarely we get Gallo this cheap, especially when he's facing a pitcher like Leake who, like I said, will give up home runs and really doesn't get strikeouts. Love this spot for Gallo. I do like some of these Rangers bats, and some of them are relatively cheap as well. Nomar Mazara and Rougned Odor, 2 value plays that really stand out. Then you got Gallo at 4,700. Ellis Andrus is only 4K, so he's a good shortstop you could look to, whether you go with him or Gene Segura. Shin-Soo Choo leading off at 4,400 feels like a pretty good play. I'm definitely going to have some Ranger stacks to go along with the Phillies. I do like them here versus Leake, and love Joey Gallo at 4,700, facing a fly ball pitcher in Leake who I believe is towards the top of the league this year in terms of home runs allowed. Definitely a guy that I always look to stack against whenever he's on the mound. But I think that's it for my 5 plays for this early slate, guys. But now looking at some potential stacks that we could go to, obviously love the Phillies, 5.8 implied run total against Jordan Zimmerman. They're going to be my top stack by far today. But for some value, I think the Rangers make sense. The Phillies give you value as well, but the Rangers versus Mike Leake I like quite a bit. Depending on who pitches for this game, whether it's Fede and it looks like right now Labs has it as Kyle Freeland, but I think Kyle Freeland's going to pitch the night game and John Gray's going to pitch the early game. But if Freeland winds up pitching the early game, Freeland definitely a guy we can stack against. So guys like Anthony Rendon, Trey Turner, Brian Dozier, Ryan Zimmerman, those guys make some sense. Righties versus Freeland, you definitely want to target. See, right now Labs has Corbin and Freeland pitching, but it's supposed to be Fede and John Gray. I guess we'll get more information as we get closer to that game time. I am recording this Tuesday night. But I think that's probably it for stacks. Well, the Brewers versus Lucas Sims makes some sense for me if you're paying down at pitching, but I don't expect to be really paying down for two pitchers today. Probably going to be paying down for one and then paying up for either Minor or Verlander. Just this mid-range just is really dead today, like from 7K to 9K. There's not really any guys in this mid-range I feel like I have to have. So I think that's it for stacks. Let's go ahead and look at some BVP real quick before we end the video. So there's quite a bit of BVP plays. I'm just going to cover the ones that really stand out to me. So Gene Segura has gone 9 for 19 with the home run off of Jordan Zimmerman. Joey Votto 9 for 28 with 2 home runs off Julius Chassin. Yasiel Puig 13 for 32, 3 home runs off Chassin, so he's got really good BVP against him. Chris Davis surprisingly has great BVP off Verlander, 6 for 14 with 4 home runs. Rougned Odor 6 for 19 with 2 home runs off of Leake. Elvis Andrus 6 for 18 with a home run. Hunter Pence 16 for 42 with a home run. Asdrubal Cabrera 7 for 17 with 2 home runs. Sin-Soo Choo 9 for 26 with 2 home runs. So if you're looking for like a BVP stack, the Rangers are definitely it. We got 3, 4, 5, 6 guys from the Rangers that have all got some pretty good BVP against Mike Leake. And then lastly, down here at the bottom, Buster Posey gone 6 for 19 with a home run off of John Lester. So those are all the BVP plays for this early slate, guys. I think that is it for this video. Like I said at the beginning, this video will be for the early slate. Obviously, after this video goes up, I will have a video for the 9-game or 8-game night slate, whatever it is. So I would appreciate it if you would check that out if you're planning to play the night slate as well. We'll cover DraftKings and Yahoo in that video. Yeah, I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoyed, and make sure you subscribe if you have not already. And if you do have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below, or like always, you can hit me up on Twitter at the DFS_GOAT. But yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we will see you in the next one. Good luck on this early slate, guys. Peace.